Hey everyone, it is me, E. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the next several Disney Channel original movies in my DCOM review series. This week's theme is going to be super movies, so movies where something extraordinary, supernatural happens.
Let's watch a Disney Channel movie.
The first movie we'll be talking about is Avalon High. I had never seen this DCOM before. It came out in 2010, so I would have been like a sophomore in high school when this came out. And so I wasn't really familiar with the story at all. It's about this girl whose parents are like medieval literature professors, and they're like obsessed with Camelot and King Arthur, and this secret society called the Order of the Bear that believes that King Arthur is due to be like reincarnated or something like that. Anyway, it's a pretty cute movie with a unique concept. However, many things in the movie are not very well explained. For example, her parents somehow deduce that the reincarnate King Arthur would be this kid named Will who lives in the new city that they moved to. But they never really explain how exactly they arrived at that conclusion. Is it just because he's a good leader? But there's a lot of kids around the United States who like play football, are class president, and do well with grades. I knew a kid like that at my high school, so it just seems unrealistic that they were like so dead set on the fact that this kid was going to be King Arthur, and it turns out they were wrong anyway. But the reason that they're wrong is because the King Arthur reincarnate turns out to be their daughter, Allie. But it's kind of, that's disappointing. That doesn't make sense either, because everybody from the King Arthur legend seems to have a corresponding reincarnation in the movie. Her friend Miles is Merlin, her teacher is Mordred, this girl named Jen is Guinevere. This kid named Lance is Lancelot. And so all of those people seem to correspond with real life people, and therefore it would make sense for Will to be King Arthur because he's in the little love triangle with his friend Lance and his girlfriend Jen. So that makes sense. Everybody has a role that makes sense. But at the end of the movie, when Allie is revealed to be King Arthur and not Will, that means that none of the roles that were designated make sense anymore. So I don't know. I feel like it's not really tight, good storytelling. It never really explains exactly how those pieces fit together. And the ending is really cheesy. I liked the modern twist on the roles that the kids play. And so it seemed kind of silly to me that the final like showdown transports them to like this mythical beach somewhere, and that they're like suddenly wearing full armor. Everything else takes place in the real world in modern times, but when the moment happens when this epic battle is supposed to take place, suddenly it looks like they're transported back in time or something. That also is not very well explained. But even in light of all of those problems that I have with the movie, I think it's pretty enjoyable as long as you don't ask very many questions. So for the story, I give it 4 out of 5. The acting, I give a 5 out of 5. The lesson gets a 1 out of 5. There's really not any lesson to this movie. And the enjoyability gets a 4 out of 5. And I think my fan art for this movie turned out really well. I obviously drew Allie in her knight gear. I drew her as, I guess, King Arthur as she appears at the end of the movie. And I think it looks really, really cool. Moving on. Next movie. Now You See It. I was originally going to include Now You See It in a Halloween mega episode. Because I think this movie originally debuted around Halloween time. But to be honest, the movie's a little bit spooky, but it's really not seem to be related to Halloween at all. So I decided to throw it in with these movies because this movie deals with magic. It's about like this, I guess, TV game show where they're trying to find the best kid magician. And all the other kids are doing sleight of hand, but this kid named Danny is like a real magician. So I have like kind of a bias against any movie that opens up with like expositional narration. And there's kind of like a picture slideshow at the beginning of the movie with accompanying narration from Ali Mashalka. and it's very, very cheesy. The other issue is, another issue, is that Danny is supposed to be a kid magician, but he looks like he's an adult, and I looked it up, and, like, he was halfway through his 20s when this movie was made, so, yeah, he definitely was not a teenager, and he did not look like one. The good news is that means that I still have a shot to play the lead in a Disney Channel original movie about high school students, so that's great. So, there's a couple of things in this movie that are kind of odd. So, like, the story is that Danny's this kid magician, and then, like, the guy who's running the reality show, I guess, kind of suspects it and wanted to get Danny to show up there so that he could steal Danny's powers. Whatever. But throughout the movie, they're kind of trying to, like, solve the mysteries of the mansion and, I guess, find out more about Danny's real magic and prove that he's a real magician, all this kind of stuff. And there's, like, this book puzzle that Allie solves in this movie, and, like, she solves it by lining up the books in a certain way. But, like, the fact that somehow solves the mystery of the mansion doesn't make a lot of sense, because it's like, those books weren't published in the mansion. Did the book publisher who published those books, like, know to put a key to the mansion puzzle on the back bindings of the books? That doesn't really make any sense, and there's no real logic to any of the riddles, and their first guesses are always correct. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves about, like, young adult media, is, like, they'll say, oh, this must mean this, and I'm like, how? Like, how does that line up and make sense? Well, let's see. And they're always right. So, like, all these little hunches that these kids go off of in, like, young adult literature and movies and stuff are always correct. And that just irritates the life out of me, because half the time it doesn't even really make sense. For the most part, the set design is good. They did a really good job with this creepy magic mansion. But there are a couple of things that look like they were done with CG and they don't look very good. Also, the whole premise of the movie doesn't make a ton of sense. So Danny's this kid magician who's, like, a real magician, and he wants to find out more about his powers, but he's also really afraid of not being able to control his powers. So the fact that he agrees to go on a show where he will have to use his magic powers doesn't make any sense. Why would he agree to do that? And the effects in the movie aren't really that great. And the ending was really dumb. Like, he flies through the air towards, like, the evil magician guy, and it just looks so bad. The whole movie was really kind of goofy and stupid. So, the story gets a 2 out of 5. The acting gets a 5 out of 5. These DCOM actors, I give them a lot of credit, because they take really crappy scripts and are able to somehow make something out of them. The lesson is a 0 out of 5, because I have no idea what the lesson of this movie was, and enjoyability gets a 1 out of 5. I really did not like Now You See It. And we'll just follow up my negative review of Now You See It with another somewhat negative review. This is going to be for The Poof Point. Again, this has opening narration, and actually narration throughout the whole story, which is quite terrible. We're talking about set design. Okay, the set design in this movie is atrocious. Everything is ugly. So they're supposed to be the scientist family, these kids who have scientist parents who are trying to unlock like the secrets to time travel. Their whole house is like orange and red, like acrylic plastic. It's supposed to look like, I guess, futuristic and high tech, but it really just looks terrible. It looks like a Nickelodeon game show in their house. It's really quite bad. And I have no idea how their kitchen works. Like, she puts a bowl of cereal into this orange box and pulls it out, and that's her breakfast. And I'm like, what was that? Was she cooking her cereal in there? I don't understand the logic behind their kitchen. So, at one point, like, Eddie, like, so the two kids' names are Eddie and Marie, and, he's talking to their parents about, being cool and relevant, and he mentions Lil Bow Wow as a relevant hip-hop artist, and that made me laugh. This movie, I think, came out in, like, the year 2000, so that's pretty funny. The acting in this movie is pretty bad. Everything sounds really, really cheesy when they say it, And Eddie, who is, I guess, the protagonist, him and his sister, Eddie is not much better than his parents. So the parents are really, really bad, and Eddie is not much better, which honestly surprised me because Taj Mowry, who plays Eddie, has been in a lot of stuff. So I think that he would be a little bit better. The effects in this movie are really cheesy, and the premise of the movie is stupid. So they're trying to unlock the mysteries of time travel, and they accidentally age themselves down. So it's kind of like in Avengers Endgame when they're trying to travel back in time to do the time heist, but when they initially are testing it, they actually just make Ant-Man younger again. I guess it's that kind of concept, but listen to this, okay? Their parents don't change physically, only mentally. Okay, that's total nonsense. Like, apparently they see themselves as younger too, so like when they look in the mirror, they see themselves as young people. That doesn't make any sense. That's just stupid. And the thing is that, like, so they're trying to figure out how to make their parents go back to normal before they reach the Poof Point, which is when they age down so much that they just cease to exist. So that doesn't make any sense because they're only aging down mentally. What would happen is they would age down to the point that they're brain dead. They wouldn't age down to the point that they stop existing. So like I said, the whole premise of the movie doesn't make any sense. Like they deny and defy the internal logic of the movie over and over and over again. When they zap themselves initially and they start aging down, they immediately become like 21-year-olds. But then for the rest of the movie, it's a very gradual de-aging process. And there's this whole plot with these neighbors complaining about them like disrupting the neighborhood, and that whole subplot is totally irrelevant. So honestly, the terrible acting and the dumb dialogue makes the movie pretty difficult to watch. There's this whole like drama between the parents, like, ooh, does he like me? Does she like me? Because like they're aged down to their younger selves, and it's just stupid. Like, it's stupid to watch. So I give this story 1 out of 5. The acting gets a 1 out of 5. The lesson gets a 2 out of 5. That is that, you know, the parents are not totally unrelatable to their children. But the enjoyability gets a 1 out of 5. And honestly, giving it a 1 out of 5 is generous. The Poof Point is very, very, very bad. Next up is Up, Up, and Away. This movie is kind of from around the same era. And it is not that bad. So I'm sorry about the 2 negative reviews kind of back to back, but this one's not bad. This one is cheesy. So it's about a superhero family. The dad and the mom, the older brother and the younger sister all have superpowers, but the middle child, Scott, his powers haven't like come in yet. And he might not get powers. And so that's kind of like the drama of the movie, is him trying to fake him having superpowers, because if he doesn't get them by the time that he's 14, chances are he won't get them at all. And he really doesn't want to disappoint his family. Like, so the effects, like when they're flying through the air, is pretty funny. And like his dad literally says up, up, and away before he flies, which is very cute and funny. Like, the thing is that like Disney Channel original movies should be cheesy, but if they have a heartwarming message and a decent story, then the cheesiness is a good thing. Because it's like nostalgic and endearing and all that kind of stuff. But if it's cheesy and the dialogue is bad and the story is bad and the acting is bad, then it's like, it's just bad. But it's not that way in this movie. It's pretty cute. I also love how throughout the movie they always eat green foods and veggies, because I feel like that's a good influence for kids to see on TV. One critique is that Scott's mom, Warrior Woman, her mask is really creepy looking. It makes her look like a villain, but that's probably one of the only things I have to complain about the movie. Visually, the movie's decent, and I feel like the concept is pretty original as well. The message that you don't have to be a superhero to help people and make a difference is really, really nice. The acting is pretty decent, and there's a somewhat famous actor in the movie. And I feel like the only actor in the movie who's a somewhat weak link is Scott's friend Randy, but he's really not that bad. So I give the story 4 out of 5, the acting gets a 4 out of 5, the lesson gets a 4 out of 5, and the enjoyability gets a 3 out of 5. Not one of my favorites, but it's pretty good. Next, let's talk about Stepsister from Planet Weird. I had never seen this DCOM, and to be honest, I'd never really even heard of it. I have no memory of this movie from when I was a kid. But it's actually pretty cute. My big complaint about the movie is that at the beginning, we're made to watch the same scenes twice. So the movie is about these two girls that are about to be part of a blended family. One girl is a normal earthling, and the other girl is literally an alien from outer space who has assumed a human form, and her father falls in love with the human girl's mother. But we're made to watch a lot of scenes in the beginning of the movie twice because we're watching them from each of the girls' perspective. The issue is that that's kind of boring to see everything twice, but it doesn't, thankfully, stay like that throughout the whole movie. I would have liked some explanation as to how Ariel, which is the alien stepsister, and her father, how they're capable of assuming a functioning human form. It's never really explained how they're able to do that, but that's okay. It's kind of a silly concept, but it's actually mostly executed pretty well. It's overall not one of the more memorable Disney Channel original movies, but there are a few good scenes, like when the alien girl flips her bike over the bike rack at school, and stuff like that. It's pretty cute. In the end, the two girls reconcile, because they kind of hate each other, because there's, I guess, a culture clash throughout the movie. Even though they don't, the human girl doesn't realize that the girl's an alien, there's a culture clash. But eventually they form a friendship, and then, they become supportive of their families blending. And it's pretty cute. Even though the human girl is not very likable. To be honest, the alien girl's not very likable either, but she's a little bit more likable than the human girl. But that's okay. The story gets a 3 out of 5. The acting gets a 4 out of 5. The lesson, I'll give a 2 out of 5, because honestly, they didn't really drive it home very well. And the enjoyability gets a 3 out of 5, so it's a pretty decent DCOM. Okay, next we'll talk about The Swap. I had never seen this DCOM. It came out, I think, in 2014, so I was already in college by the time this movie came out, and I wasn't really watching Disney Channel anymore. But I think it was actually a really cute and well done DCOM. It's kind of about dealing with daddy issues, which is funny. There are a lot of sweet moments in this movie. So it's about this boy and this girl who think that the other's life would be so much better, and they're able to switch lives via their cell phones, which I'll get more to that in a little bit, but they switch, so they swap bodies. And so it's really sweet because Jack, the boy, is so careful not to see himself or herself naked while he's in Ellie's body. And so he's always wearing tons of layers or covering his eyes. And so that's really funny because they didn't gloss over exactly how that would work, but they addressed it and showed him kind of being gentlemanly about it. It was also cool in this movie to see a friend break up. So throughout the course of the movie, Jack, as Ellie, starts to realize that Ellie's best friend, who was in the middle of ditching her, really wasn't the best friend for her. And after they swap their bodies back, Ellie comes to understand that. And so she basically breaks up with her friend. And I think that that's cool for kids to see that, friends can break up. Just like with romantic relationships, sometimes friendships just don't work out in the end. And it's okay to say, look, I still care about you, I don't hate you, but it's just we're not best friends anymore. And that's okay. I think a lot of us adults, have those moments where we had falling outs with friends, but we never officially said, it's over. And so it's we never really get closure for our friend relationships. We always get closure when we break up with a romantic partner, but we never really get closure when things just don't work out with a friend. And so I think it's cool to see a friend break up in a movie. So back to how they actually swap bodies. It's kind of goofy. So the concept is that they basically worship their phones until they become powerful totems that have power over their lives. And so when they text on their phone that they wish they could swap bodies, because their phones have been imbued with mystical religious power, it actually grants their wish. That whole concept is bizarre to me, but whatever. The other thing is that the romantic relationship drama in the movie does not really seem necessary, and the ending is dissatisfying because I actually think that Jack and Ellie would have been a cute couple together, but they get paired off with like these random tertiary characters. So it's not very satisfying. And it seems like a lot of those relationships are very undeveloped. But overall, the movie's pretty cute. And I give the story a 4 out of 5, the acting a 4 out of 5, the lesson gets a 5 out of 5, and the enjoyability just gets a 3 out of 5. I probably wouldn't watch this one again, but if I had to, I wouldn't hate it. And the last movie we'll talk about is How to Build a Better Boy. Again, this is one I had never seen, but it's actually really, very quite cute. I think the story is pretty decent, even though it's kind of far-fetched. It's at least kind of well explained. So it's about these two girls. They're both kind of dorky and socially outcast. And the white girl, whose name I don't remember right now, May is her name. She has a crush on this guy at school who's played by Noah Centineo, who's like a Netflix movie star. But she has a crush on him, and her friend Gabby is basically like, yeah, right, he'll never like you. And she gets all kind of upset about it because she entertains the fantasy that maybe he likes her back. And so they create a robot boyfriend. They don't realize that they're successful because they think that it's just like a computer AI, not a real life robot, because they think that May's dad works for a computer, like a programming company, like to make video games, but it turns out he actually works for like the US Department of Defense. So they think they're designing a video game character, but really they're designing an AI and like a physical form for a robot. And so when the robot shows up, he actually starts basically to date May because that's what he's been programmed to do. And it's actually pretty cute. And I like it because her older brother Bart is actually a really interesting character. And I think that's actually probably one of the most realistic depictions of siblings that I've ever seen in a DCOM. The whole movie shows that her older brother really cares about her and loves her and wants to help her, doesn't want to see her get in trouble. And I mean, part of that is that he has a crush on her friend Gabby, but I don't get the impression that he's doing all this just because he has a crush on Gabby. If anything, the kind of shoehorned love story between Bart and Gabby is my least favorite part of the movie. Especially, if anything, it's because it seems like Gabby is jealous for her friend May and has no interest in boys. For most of the movie, it seems like she's jealous of the robot boyfriend, honestly. But it's just because she's not used to her friend having a social life outside of her. The love interest between May and Noah Centineo, so it turns out he actually did kind of like her back, and just wasn't brave enough to tell her. It's pretty cute. And I give the movie points for that. The virtual boyfriend soldier guy was actually super cute too. So lots of cute boys in the movie. A pretty sweet story about like her, I guess, coming out of her shell a little bit and realizing that, boys could like her. She doesn't have to have a virtual boyfriend, and her friend realizing that it's okay if her friend gets a boyfriend. The soundtrack to this movie is actually really good too. So I give the story a 4 out of 5. The acting gets a 4 out of 5. The lesson gets a 3 out of 5. And the enjoyability gets a 5 out of 5. So I give How to Build a Better Boy, actually it's a pretty good rating, especially for a newer DCOM. Well, that's pretty much it for this video. I'm only covering 7 videos or 7 movies this week. Like I said, I'm going to do like a Halloween mega episode. So most of these videos are going to have like between 7 and 10 movies reviewed in them, just depending on how many movies I feel like fit into the category I'm talking about. But I just want to do one big Halloween episode, so that's going to have a lot more movies in it. So that's why this one's a little bit shorter. But I hope you enjoyed. I hope that you agree with some of my opinions. And if you don't, maybe I trashed one of your favorite DCOMs in this episode. Let me know in the comments below. And that's all I have to say. I hope you guys have a great weekend. Bye-bye.